The other big thing that came out of last night's game, and I see a bunch of you talking about it in the chat already, Anaheim Ducks general manager Pat Verbeek was in attendance for the second consecutive game. He was watching the Oilers take on the Minnesota Wild, and maybe you were like, maybe he's watching the Wild. Maybe he's doing some pre-scouting for the Oilers versus Ducks on Saturday. I can tell you emphatically that he is not doing any pre-scouting for the game on Saturday. There's more to this. Michael Russo of The Athletic says he was eating, that is, Pat Verbeek was eating with Ken Holland as well on Monday, and then he traveled to Nashville to watch the Oilers in person once again. GMs don't just do this kind of stuff for fun, Liam. Pat Verbeek wasn't sitting in his house, probably somewhere on Malibu Beach or whatever, going, you know what? I think I want to head out to Minnesota and just watch the Oilers play for funsies. That's not how this works. Pat Verbeek's here for a reason. And I see Sergeant Battle asking the question, does Jesse Puljujarvi take the plane home with the Ducks on Saturday? And does someone from the Ducks stay in Edmonton? I'll be honest, this is a legitimate conversation to have. This isn't making up something for the sake of clicks. This isn't just talking about something because we're running out of things to talk about or something like that. Pat Verbeek scouting the Oilers. Alex, put that tinfoil hat away. This is legit. I don't want to see it in my little preview window. This is legit, Liam, and I think this is a really intriguing fit between Puljujarvi and the Ducks, if that is what this is about.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, this isn't just something that happens every night in the NHL. Like, GMs aren't just sat there thinking, oh, I'll just go to this game. Like, he had to travel to get there. Like, wasn't in his back door. So it's such an intriguing thing to happen. We kind of saw something very similar. This was a while ago now, but when Ales Hemsky was traded to Ottawa, right? Like, his last game for the Oilers was against Ottawa, and he scored 2 goals that game, and he got on the plane with them basically and left Edmonton with Ottawa. So I don't know. It's interesting. And I thought one thing, I didn't know actually the Ducks GM was there last night. Did you find it interesting that they were trying to get Puljujarvi a goal last night? Because it became very obvious in the third period that he was bumped up whilst Hyman was on a hat trick to try and get a goal. What did you make of that? Do you think that kind of had anything to play with it? Like, oh, look what he can do with like top guys and stuff.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I don't think Jay Woodcroft coaches with that kind of stuff in mind. I think that might have just been an instance where it was like, hey, we're winning in this hockey game. The penalty kill, having to have a penalty kill as often as you did was thrown off the lines a little bit. So Puljujarvi just worked his way up there. Maybe Jay Woodcroft is thinking about it from a perspective of like, hey, got to get this guy going a little bit. But I do think it works out that way. You know, it's a happy coincidence is what I'd call it. If the Ducks were indeed interested in Puljujarvi, potential returns. Daniel Nugent-Bowman of The Athletic wrote the other day that some within the Oilers would consider it a win just to get rid of Puljujarvi's $3 million cap hit. Frank Saravalli was on with Bob Stauffer yesterday on Oilers Now, and he said the Oilers at this point might need to add a sweetener just to get rid of Puljujarvi's $3 million cap hit. And I think if that is the case, you hold off on it. If this was the trade, if the trade deadline was tomorrow and it was like, hey, we're trying to make a deal here, we're trying to get something done, we need to get rid of Puljujarvi's money, and all the team is offering is a 4th rounder, sure. At that point, maybe you'd feel the squeeze a little bit and you should do it. But those reports coming out speaks to how low Puljujarvi's value is right now. And for me, at a moment when your forward group is still banged up, missing McLeod, missing Fogle, missing Evander Kane, and Puljujarvi's value is low, I think it would be a mistake to just jump and trade this guy for magic beans just to get out of his salary right now. You should wait, see if he has a couple of good months, and then if you need to salary dump him in March, you do it then. But right now, I think just salary dumping Puljujarvi would be a big mistake.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's not doing any harm, I think is a good way to put it. Like, when he's out on the ice, he's not playing terribly for this team. He just can't score at the moment, and that's his biggest issue. But, you know, I just think having to add a sweetener to get rid of a guy, where the
Yeah.
Oilers are right now just isn't something they need to even look at all. I think Puljujarvi, like, what was it? I think Bobby said it on the show yesterday too, right? Like, he had 23 points in 29 games last year. Like, people know this guy can play in the NHL. He's just in a bit of a bad
Yeah.
spot, and I don't think it's fair just to the Oilers, for the players, just to be like, oh well, we got to get rid of him for a third because we need the money. It's like, well, what's the plan? Like, who's coming in? I guess that's my question. Like, are they wanting? Is there somebody else on the table to replace Puljujarvi right now, or are we just gonna run the risk of having a bottom six with Hamlin, Derek Ryan, Holloway, Shaw, and whoever else they throw in there?
An interesting name, and Tyler's in the chat asking about it. You were asking about it yesterday too. I remember that. Max Comtois, 23 years old, pending RFA with Arbrights. This guy's 5 goals in 19 games this season. That would be an interesting one for a handful of reasons. One, he can score, and he's proven he can score at different points in his career. He's played in just over 140 games with the Ducks in his career. He's played 165 games with the Ducks in his career. He scored 34 goals. Back in the 2020 season, he had 16 goals in 55 games. He can score, and like Puljujarvi, he brings some size to your lineup. He's 6'2", 210 pounds, but he plays with a little bit more bite. And I think that's something that could interest Ken Holland. We know the Oilers. Frank has said this on the show. By the way, Frank Saravalli's hit on Oilers Nation Everyday is going to be tomorrow. They want to be tougher to play against. The organization has identified that as a need. And I think Max Comtois makes you more difficult to play against. So in that sense, I could see the Oilers wanting to do something along the lines of a Puljujarvi for Comtois swap. Would that be enough from the Ducks' perspective? I don't know. Would Anaheim want to pick? Would they throw some conditions on that? I honestly, I'm not sure. I have a very hard time reading the value on these two players because, again, I think Puljujarvi should be more valuable than a salary dump, but there are some around the league that don't view it that way. So Comtois is the name I would watch because I really think it's either going to be something like that where you're swapping Puljujarvi for like a bottom 6 piece, because, again, that's kind of what he is right now, or you're just moving him for a draft pick. And the Ducks do have a lot of draft picks. They have 3 second-rounders and 2 third-rounders. But again, if this was the deadline and you're like, okay, we want to go get Max Domi and we want to go get a defenseman. Sorry, I kind of stole your thunder there with Domi. We'll get to that in a second, Liam. But if you wanted to go get Max Domi and a defenseman and you're like, we need extra pick capital and we need cap space, then swapping Puljujarvi for a second at that point would make sense.